This is an AMI podcast.
Let us wonder at how X was just a rare letter until algebra came along and made it something special that can be unraveled to reveal inner value. You're listening to AMI Audiobook Review. I'm Ramya Amuddin, your host, and joining me is Nazreen Abdel-Majid. Nazreen, happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday to you.
Really cool quote that we started off with, bringing up algebra right at the beginning of the show. The letter
Gave me
X.
headaches.
I know. But I am curious about the actual book that it came from, which is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. And this is going to be recommended, well, giving you a little bit of a preview here, recommended by our guest who's joining us later on in the show, Julia Bonnett in Vancouver. So excited to talk to Julia. She's doing a ton of stuff right now. And we haven't super duper talked about reading yet and listening to audiobooks. So I'm actually very, very pumped to talk about that with her. As we like to start the show off, let's take a glance at the CELA homepage, starting with the three featured titles at the very top of the page. So if you go to celalibrary.ca, that's C-E-L-A library.ca, The Bookseller of Florence by Ross King, this is a biography, is the first thing on the featured list. The second one is Dad Up by Steve Patterson, Humor. Okay, that's a humor novel, and I'm really looking forward to talking more about that one as well just after the break, but there's a lot to talk about there. And then the third one on the list is The Meaning of Mariah Carey by Mariah Carey. This is a memoir in audiobook format, all human narrated on CELA. Gonna go to some announcements now. The first announcement is a guide to the upcoming federal election is now available on CELA. Woohoo! We all need a guide as voters. So Elections Canada has provided a reference handbook for electors with all the necessary information to be ready to vote at the next federal election. And it's creeping up. So this is what's available in audio for you on the CELA website. A guide to the federal election, election health and safety, voting assistance tools and services, voter ID fact sheet. So those are the things that are available for you on the CELA website, as I said, in audio. But if you want to order a physical CD, Braille, or large print copy, you can contact Elections Canada directly. I'll give you the number right now, 1-800-463-6868. And if you just grabbed your device or your pen or paper, it's 1-800-463-6868. Want to go through another announcement, Nisreen, because this one is really cool for anyone who's, let's say, gone through all the books available for listening on CELA, and they're like, do we get any more? Yes, you do, because the collection keeps getting bigger. So CELA, and NLS exchanged thousands of titles in a new agreement. So this is published on their blog on August 31st, 2021 by Karen McKay, the Center for Equitable Library Access, and the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled, also known as NLS, at the Library of Congress in the United States have partnered to exchange accessible books thanks to the Marrakesh Treaty. So the Marrakesh Treaty allows for exchange of accessible books across national boundaries for people with print disabilities worldwide. It sounds exciting because it is. And they say, we're excited to be receiving more than 80,000 books in audio and Braille from our American colleagues at NLS. And they've already added CELA-produced titles to their collection. So there's a lot of swap going on here. The Marrakesh Treaty, for some background, it's increasing the number of titles that accessible libraries like CELA and NLS can access. Canada was the 20th country to enter into the Marrakesh Treaty in 2016, and that brought the treaty into force and allowed for worldwide exchanges for us here in Canada. Also, the U.S. acceded to the agreement later on in 2019, laying the groundwork for the exchange of these materials with CELA. As part of the exchange, NLS is adding more than 2,000 CELA titles, including audio and braille, to their collection. And the agreement between CELA and NLS is ongoing, so it doesn't stop here. The organizations are continuing to exchange titles as they become more available. I'll pause it there. You can read the whole post, as I said, on their blog at celalibrary.ca. Just want to say, though, that the first addition to the collection include the top 100 NLS circulating titles, and additional populated titles. So the big titles are all up there for you. Nizreen, this is your time to shine, girl, because you're going to be telling us what's trending. There's a few things trending on what? Where do you want to start?
So I'm going to start with audiobooks.com, and they released this week's hottest releases of audiobooks. And I'm going to start off with Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. Then we got Forgotten in Death and Eve Dallas by J.D. Robb, Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell, The Stolen Hours by Alan Eskins, The Bright Future, and it's a memoir, Fault Lines by Emily Atami. So there's so many more. There's so much more audiobooks for this week's hottest releases. Out of all these that I've listed, I think Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, I'm so gonna get into it. I read the synopsis of it and it sounds pretty interesting to me. Another thing that was trending is Audible.com said that September 6th was National Read a Book Day.
Woohoo.
So happy National Read a Book Day. I know we're a few days late, but it's still a time to celebrate for all you bookworms out there. I'm still getting into it, and Rock, Paper, Scissors will be something that I'm going to get into. It's by Alice Feeney. So I'm really excited.
I'm really excited that there are all these days throughout the year to celebrate book listening and book reading.
Yeah.
It's one and the same, right? Yeah.
I've honestly listed so many books on Now with Dave Brown, that's the morning show, and I do What's Trending there as well. And book reading, book pitches are always on Twitter trending. So there's so many days to celebrate a Read a Book Day. There you go.
Every
it's
day is
exciting.
Read a Book Day.
That's true.
Thanks, Niz. Welcome back to AMI Audiobook Review on AMI Audio. I'm Ramya Amudan here with Nizreen Abdelmajid, and we're getting into something that we're temporarily calling, because, Nizreen, we don't know what will stick and what won't at this point. We're temporarily calling it pause or play. And I'll tell you exactly what this means. So we glanced over a few books from the CELA homepage earlier on under the featured book section. And now we're going to choose to hit either pause or play on one of those books. So we're going to put Dad Up by Steve Patterson to the test and see what we think. I'll just go ahead and tell you what the synopsis is. From one of the country's most beloved comedians and hosts of CBC Radio's incredibly popular program, The Debaters, comes a funny, poignant, and at times an unexpected look at what it means to be a dad in this day and age. Steve Patterson has been thinking about daddom for quite a while. In Dad Up, he gives his all to be the best father possible to two young girls while imparting his hard-won wisdom and insights to readers everywhere. The youngest of 5 boys growing up in an Irish Catholic household, Patterson mines his childhood for any sage advice that he may have picked up from his own dad. And he talks with candor about the difficulty he and his wife Nancy had conceiving and finding humor in their experiences with the fertility clinic's automated phone calls, which Patterson calls robo-pimp, informing them when Nancy was ovulating. He chronicles the disappointment of failing to get pregnant, only to have the miracle conception take place in Regina during Grey Cup week under the guiding spirit of the Saskatchewan Roughriders and comedian Brent Butt. Don't ask, he says in parentheses. From that point on, Steve Patterson assumes full dad mode, riffing on the biohazard that is changing a diaper, the absolute futility of stuffed animals, becoming a public breastfeeding warrior in the most unexpected of places, and how growing up a little boy in no way prepares you for being a father to two little girls. Most importantly, Dad Up charts the awesome experiences of charting tiny infants that you somehow had a hand in creating evolve into confident and crafty little people and the lessons that they teach along the way. So, here's the point at which we ask ourselves, pause or play. Nazreen, you?
I'm going to be honest, it's a pause for me just because it's something that I can't relate to. I mean, it sounds interesting, but it's not interesting enough for me personally because I'm not going through, I'm not going through that situation, or it doesn't ring a bell to me that I don't, you know what I mean.
Okay. No, agreed. I can see where you're coming from. For me too, reading memoirs and these kind of like self-written books of different experiences, biographies, autobiographies are quite a new experience. So I'm curious about it because I love the comedy angle. And I'm thinking that Steve Patterson did a good job just because of the way that the synopsis was written. You get a glimpse of what that humor is going to feel like.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling the humor, then you're most likely, well, hopefully feeling the book.
Yeah. I mean, it still sounds interesting to me, and it sounds very important. And a lot of parents can probably relate to what he's experiencing. It's just not my cup of tea.
Well, we're going to ask one more person what their idea of this, or what the influence of this, the impression, that's the word I'm looking for, geez, the impression of this book feels like. We're going to check in with an avid audiobook listener, and we're opening up the space at this point to discuss and recommend and browse and conceptualize and reminisce on audiobooks, because why not do all the above? And joining us from Vancouver, BC is Julia Bonnett, who is a community reporter on Kelly and Company, as well as the host of the just released podcast and audio memoir of a sort, Finding a New Voice. Julia, welcome to AMI Audiobook Review.
Thank you so much, Ramya. This is and Nazreen. I mean, I'm so happy to be here, and I have to say that I was listening to your, the synopsis you were reading, and it was all I could do to stop laughing out loud just from the synopsis, because it was the biohazard of changing a diaper that just about sent me over the edge. Because as a parent myself, like I totally relate to all this, and you know how it is with comedy, like it helps get you through the tough times, and I can understand maybe not being that interested if you're not, if you haven't maybe been through those tough times, but sometimes It's like if you haven't slept, like it seems like you haven't slept in a week, and there's all of these sort of chaotic things happening in your life. At the time you're miserable, but then when you look back on it, you laugh. So I'm totally in. I'm totally into this book. Thinking, okay, Christmas. Christmas
exactly.
List,
Exactly. Find it on CELA, Julia, because it's true.
Yeah.
I think what you're pointing out here is, like it's the post experience of writing, right? Like when you're going through it, you're not in the headspace. I'm assuming Steve wasn't in the headspace to write about being the best father ever. And now he's able to deliver it in this really hilarious tone and, get other people hooked on it like yourself who are parents.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally loved him from The Debaters. So, I mean,
there you go.
I'm. It's funny because it's not like I never knew that I liked to laugh or anything like that. But until sort of recently, I didn't really say, "Hey, I want to go out and see a comedian." Like I haven't really done that before. But in the last few years, I think maybe just, I don't know what it is, maybe being housebound or something like that. And I've been on the radio or like listening to The Debaters, listening on the radio. And I'm beginning to realize like how cathartic it is for people going through stuff.
Absolutely.
And so absolutely, I mean, I'm on it. I'm going to, yes, I'll do CELA, but I'll also be, sending it to a few people I know.
What's great is the I think that, like, watching comedy, listening to comedy is an experience in itself, but also reading things written by comedians seem to have like this other level of intimacy for you. I read the memoir written by Trevor Noah, and I could not stop laughing from beginning to end. And I didn't even know him as a comedian, really, until I read the book. And then I went back and started listening to him or seeing him host different things. And I thought, wow, but the book was something else because you get to hear it like it's story time,
Yeah, that's Born a Crime, right? That's the name of the book?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's been on my list, actually.
There you go.
I've gotten it too. So I'm going to move it up the list now because you told me. It was so
Really,
good.
we invite people on the show just to remind them that there's books on their list that they need to get to. That was the reason.
Right.
How many audiobooks do you get in? And I'm not looking for a real number. This is not a quiz, but are you an avid audiobook listener?
Yeah, well, I'm a continuous audiobook listener, I guess. I mean, and certainly I have a few, on my list that I'm waiting to get to. I wish I had more time for that, but absolutely, I love to. I've always loved to read, and now I'm loving to listen. It's a different experience in a way, but I still really love it.
That's great. And we'll get into, what that feels and looks and sounds like for you, good audiobooks and good audiobook listening. But in terms of getting into the audiobook listening, do you connect with others, or are you part of any audiobook clubs, or do you know and have people in your life that you share this experience with, or does it feel more solo?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm not part of a group. I know that they exist, and maybe that's something I'll do eventually. I have to say that I'm kind of slow just because I'm kind of busy, and I wouldn't want that pressure of, oh, I've got to, I've got to finish the book by the next meeting. Unless I could find a book club where really the main purpose is to get together and drink wine, and you can have something to talk about as well. But I absolutely have people in my life who are also avid audiobook listeners, and so they tell me about stuff, I tell them about stuff, and there's definitely I would say a growing, it just seems like a growing appreciation of experiencing storytelling in this way. So I'm all
For
for
sure. For sure. We're constantly talking about, and if you give us the time, we will continue to talk about, how much the movement is growing. And it really doesn't feel like we're at the time of, oh yeah, I think I've heard of the talking book. No, like it is blasting. It's exploding. And so many people consider it as just a conventional way to listen. Authors are putting out narrations pretty much at the same time they release their paperback. So it's incredible. Is there a favorite place, Julia, in your home that you like to listen to audiobooks at, or, the feel of the way of you like listening to audiobooks?
Well, I have to admit, like, one of the great things about audiobooks for me is that I can do something else at the same time.
True.
like folding laundry, or even cooking sometimes, and weeding, things like that. I'm so happy to have some way to kind of keep my brain occupied when I'm doing some of those other things. But even like going for a walk, sometimes, depending on where I am, I can like let my mind be occupied by things other than just where am I going, right? And then, of course, like so have enjoyed over the summer being able to just relax in the evenings outside on the the patio furniture or whatever, and just watch the light go down as I'm listening, and it's just been lovely. But I'll listen wherever.
Wherever, yeah, exactly. Some people have their preferred seasons and things too, right? So going back to what you were saying about sharing books with people and people sharing books with you. Now, I love getting recommendations from friends, but especially friends who can say, "Oh, you loved that book, you'll love this one." So I go to other, I'd say even bigger readers than I am, which a lot of people are, and ask them for recommendations. So what's your process when it comes to taking in recommendations, like for real, not just saying, okay, cool, I'll check it out?
Yeah. Well, my brother is a really great source because we'll have conversations, and we're kind of not exactly on the same page, let's say politically. So he will give me good recommendations to just kind of give me another perspective. And I do appreciate that,
Mm.
actually. And so, when he sends me something, he's an academic, right? So sometimes if it's too academic, I'll say, next, but then.
Do you know that a few pages in? How academic it feels?
Well, yeah, I mean, sort of, because there's only so many really big words that I have to deal with while I'm trying to relax. But no, I mean, but all in all, he's a really good source. And then I have other friends, because I do sort of like nonfiction and fiction, and so I do have some friends who are really fiction people, like they just really like to read a good like historical drama or something like that. And so when they say, yes, this is good, I will pay attention. And then sometimes it just comes from wherever, listening to the radio and hearing
Yeah.
an author talk or whatever. So I'm kind of open to wherever it comes from.
Well, I don't want to have to let you go without getting in a recommendation because, it works both ways, Julia. We recommend for you, and you recommend for us. So,
Okay.
so let us know, because I did feature a quote from a book that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, well, this book was, again, yeah, I think this is one book that I heard discussed on a show, and the author. So this is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. And it won the Booker Prize. It's had lots of awards. I mean, maybe I'm the last person to read it, because you look online and it's won almost every award out there.
Mhm.
But I don't know if you've ever run across a book that just kind of fills in, a part of, let's say, the cultural conversation that you just weren't even aware was there, or you just
Right.
fills in a kind of a sense of what life, the lived experience of other people is like, in a way that makes you connect on a human level. And that's what this book did for me.
That is incredible, because I can't pinpoint a book that's made me feel that way, but that concept, right? When you run into a scene in a book, or, a particular part of a series, and you go, wow, I didn't realize the depth of which, because, sometimes it's like, okay, this doesn't affect me by, right? But in a book,
Yeah.
especially after you're invested, it's incredible the impact that some of the storytelling or character building, or just the things that are put in to writing does for you.
Well, yeah, and I mean, again, like, we're all people, right? We're all just fellow beings trying to get through our lives, and so a really good storyteller, I think, has a way of making that clearer from the get-go. And this particular book is actually sort of short biographies of 12 different characters that are kind of all connected in some way, but it's like the experiences mainly of Black women in England over the last century, and there's all kinds of different walks of life that come into this picture. And this is a big conversation right now, right, with all of the
Huge.
different political stuff around all that. And this helped me understand, a lot of what's going on in that conversation. And it's so nice to find that in a novel, which, the end result is, let's bring people together, so that's what
Yeah.
I found this novel did.
Very vulnerable and very true. Julia, thank you so much for joining us on the show. You and I have never really talked to audiobooks before, but this is just the start. So, be
Okay.
prepared.
All right. I'm going to have to cozy up on the couch a little more often,
That's
keep up.
right. It's very difficult stuff. Take care.
You too. Thanks.
We were speaking with Julia Bonnett in Vancouver. She's a community reporter for Kelly and Company on AMI Audio. She's also the host of the just released podcast, which is also an audio memoir called Finding a New Voice. You can search this up under the Kelly and Company feed at the moment. So search for Kelly and Company and on your favorite podcast platform to find Finding a New Voice. Nisreen, thank you for your presence today and for giving us what's trending and for helping us behind the scenes.
I got you, girl. Oh, for sure. Ramya, there's one thing that I still haven't asked you yet about audiobooks, and
Oh.
I am shocked that I forgot to ask you. What genre are you even into?
Oh no, I love my psychological thrillers. Anything psychological, anything that's ready to spook me. I mean, of course, the characters all need to play some great roles, but if it's gonna freak me out, I'm most likely gonna read it.
That's interesting. That's
Yeah, I
interesting. I've
know.
never heard of that.
We gotta
I'm
psychoanalyze
into
that for sure.
romantic, obviously. I'm like
Mm.
the, typical girl being like, I'm into the romantic
You
stuff.
find the Prince Charming in the books.
No, not like
Oh,
that.
okay.
It's
Not that
always
far.
it's always the, like falling in love with the bad guy and then the good guy comes
Ah,
along.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
typical
well,
stuff. It's very
got-
predictable.
That's okay. I mean, it can be predictable, but it's also comfy. It's very
It is
comfy reading
comfy.
stuff like that.
It's like, I know what's going to happen, but it's comfy.
I know. It's like, when you pick your favorite comfort zone movies on a Friday night because you just want to relax for a bit. Thanks,
Yeah.
Nazreen.
Thank you.
AMI Audiobook Review every Saturday on AMI Audio at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us to get your Saturday wrapped up with some audiobook talk. I'm Ramya Amudin. See you next week.
This was an AMI podcast. For more accessible media, visit ami.ca.